Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a cool evening. Good to do some meditation to stay inwardly warm, opening and warming the heart up with some meditation. So just taking our time to settle into the right mindset, mind mode, mind way of being, a mindful way of being for our meditation. So having established our comfortable sitting posture, aligning our body with some degree of symmetry, balance, poise, helping to bring our awareness within, having our initial deep, relaxing, letting go breath, and using that outgoing, letting go breath to carry away any stress, tension, issues, concerns that have been building in our body over the happening of this week, the happening of even this day, and even the last few hours. Relaxing, releasing, letting go. Appreciating our meditation is very much the practice of letting go. Releasing, relinquishing all that doesn't pertain to simply being. Being and knowing rather than doing and thinking. The possibility of sourcing that fundamental true nature of our being as inner stillness, silence, and spaciousness. So with the eyes gently closed, bringing awareness within, breathing out stress, tension, and feeling into our body. Meditation is an embodied experience of feeling grounded, settled, centered. And firstly, just sensing the physical body sitting, a few contact sensations, mindfully sensing, feeling, noticing our feet connecting with the floor. Feeling the body connecting with the chair, the cushion, or meditation stool. Feeling the placement of our hands and fingers resting in our lap. Making sure they feel comfortable, adjusting them if we need to. Relaxing the abdomen, belly area. Relaxing the chest area. Feeling the subtle movement of chest, abdomen, belly as the body breathes. Also noticing our face, maybe feeling sensations on our face. The air connecting with our face. And also noticing some degree of light coming in through the closed eyelids. And even looking into that lightness, brightness, blankness through the closed eyelids. A forward focused gaze into the space in front through the closed eyelids. And not being distracted by any background sounds that we might hear. And and particularly also the internal mental sight or sounds of thoughts, not engaging into those, but rather choosing to bring mindful awareness to the naturally occurring sensation of the breath. Taking time to actually feel each individual breath, each life-giving breath. Especially feeling the breath at the nose-nostril area. Feeling each breath, looking into the lightness, brightness through the closed eyelids. And also using a mental word or two, a mantra in the mind if that's helpful, in conjunction with each in-breath, out-breath. Feeling and knowing each life-giving breath, receiving the gift of life with the in-breath, and then returning that gift to the space around us with the out-breath. Staying with each breath, feeling each breath, knowing each breath mindfully, gently, faithfully, settling into inner calm, clarity, peace, and presence. This evening, welcome to Sam here for the first time. Welcome, Sam. Please help yourself to some tea and biscuits, and we can have some reflection, discussion, and questions. There is a wonderful collection of teachings, the Buddha's teachings, a collection called the Dhammapada. Dhammapada, and in this collection, there must be a couple of hundred short teachings, all in short form, just 3 or 4 lines each, and they relate to a particular situation, circumstance, where the Buddha gave some brief utterance, some brief teaching. Generally, um, in a book form, they're just the teaching itself, in say 3 or 4 stanzas. Sometimes they're two verses paired together. Sometimes the collection, say the book, has a story that evoked the particular teaching. But there's one teaching that comes to mind that I think is significant and a motivation for spiritual practice. And this verse or teaching says, "It is wisdom that sees the importance of letting go of a lesser happiness to realize a higher happiness." So wisdom or discernment that sees the importance of letting go, of seeking a lesser happiness to find a higher happiness. And this very much relates to maybe what we're doing in being here tonight in terms of practicing meditation. Excuse me. the practice of meditation itself, wherever we might be doing it, here, at home, elsewhere on a retreat. And even to a discussion that I had with Ajahn Tiradhammo, who many of you were able to sit with on the Thursday night session, not last Thursday, but the Thursday before, and then the Sunday after that with the Sunday retreat day that we had. And I did say that I'd maybe offer some further things that I discussed and spoke to him about just when we're sitting casually inside, having a cup of tea, talking or walking and talking about things. And one of the things that we did to reflect upon was the state of affairs, even the future of not just Buddhism, um, not just Buddhism in Australia, but even Theravada Buddhist monastic life in Australia. Given that obviously Ajahn Tiradhammo, he's a Buddhist monk, he's been a Buddhist monk for 51 years, so quite significant to have a Westerner having been ordained as a Buddhist monk for that length of time. There's not many monastics, Western monastics, that have been a Buddhist monk for that length of time. And so for me, I always find it wonderful to have him here, have other monks here as well, but particularly him, because we met in 1989 in England when I went as a monk from Thailand to England to be there. And so that's what, 36 years ago. So I've known him for a few years then. We've both changed a bit. I think we both got bigger, not taller. um, and being able to connect with him and have a familiarity and talk about things, things that he would share with me that he wouldn't share with other people, because he knows me for such a length of time, and I know a lot of the monastics that he knows and talks about. So just checking in on, how's the state of affairs of Buddhist monks, particularly Western Buddhist monks, in the world today, and certainly in Australia. And so we were discussing how there seems to be, unfortunately, a decrease, a decline, a diminishing in the number of Buddhist monastics in Australia, particularly Western Buddhist monastics. The monastery that he's currently in, Wat Buddha Dharma, which was established as a Buddhist monastery for certainly for Australian people to be in, a monastery meditation centre just north of Sydney at Wiseman's Ferry. And that was my first place of being a monk for a couple of years. And at the time, there was the abbot who established the monastery, Prakantipalo, an English Buddhist monk. So there's him. There was another novice monk, Suviro. There was myself. And in time, there was another couple of novice monks. So there's sort of like 5 of us there. At times, there was Sister Ayakima, a German Buddhist nun, quite well known for her meditation teachings and retreats and books, as was also Prakantipalo. I went off to Thailand, to the forest monasteries there. Some of the other novice monks did the same sort of thing. But at the moment, and even for a number of years now, down at Wat Buddha Dharma, which has been established since about 1978. I first went there in 1981, the end of 81. So at the moment, there's Ajahn Kemavaro, who's the abbot, and Ajahn Tiradhammo, he is more senior to Ajahn Kemavaro. But Ajahn Kemavaro is the abbot, and there's more recently an Australian novice has ordained. So there's sort of 3 of them, and that's sort of somewhat unfortunate in that there's it's a large place. It's 220 acres of forest surrounded by Darug National Park. So it's a huge place. Can accommodate quite a lot of monks, nuns, so monastics. At times they do have retreats there, and they can accommodate around about 40 people on retreat. But there's a lessening of motivation to certainly for people to take up ordained life and be there. Somewhat similar to the monastery up in Ipswich, Dharmagiri Monastery, another Theravada forest monastery. There's which has been established probably about 15 years. I forget the date it was established, and there's only 2 monks there. They've been there for quite some time. The abbot, Ajahn Dhammasiha, and I think that's the abbot, and then Ajahn uh,
Is it Moneo or something like that?
Moneo, yeah, Ajahn Moneo. He's an Austrian monk, and the abbot is a German monk. At times they have monks visiting, like Ajahn Buripanya, who was here for the retreat. He at times visits there. At times there's Thai monks that visit, but otherwise there's just 2 monks there. Ajahn Kalyano, who he's an English Buddhist monk. I was with him in Thailand. He was a couple of years junior to me. He's got a monastery down in Warburton, Victoria, quite a large space. He's got quite a number of monks. Many of them are Asian monks. And also there's um, the Bodhinyana Monastery in Perth, Western Australia, where Ajahn Brahm is the abbot. I was with Ajahn Brahm in Thailand. He's an English Buddhist monk. Quite a number of monks there. But also there's concern as to what happens to the monastery and monastic life when Ajahn Brahm retires from being so dynamic and engaged in teaching, and or dies and isn't around anymore, because I think Ajahn Brahm is part of the attraction for a lot of the monastics to be there. And so with Ajahn Tiradhammo, we were discussing the current situation, and certainly there is a decline in the motivation of people to take up monastic life um, compared to maybe, say, 20, 30, even 40 years ago. Certainly when I ordained, if you wanted to practice meditation and serious about meditation, the main way was to ordain as a Buddhist monk, because there wasn't a whole lot of meditation groups around, meditation centers, retreat centers. The internet wasn't a thing. Probably wasn't even the word internet. Maybe for fishing, but there was books, but not many books about meditation. It was really still the early days of Buddhism developing in the West. We could say that Buddhism, um, sure, there have been Western Buddhist monks for um, probably about 80 years. More in Europe, where or European monks, German monks that went to Sri Lanka, um, later on to Thailand. So there's been Buddhist monastics and Buddhist monasteries probably about the last 40 years in the West. But I think it's having an experience where we're needing to question why are people less likely to ordain as Buddhist monastics? Yes, one is there's less of a need. If you want to practice meditation, you can do it online. You can do it wherever you are, as in our session this evening's online, which is wonderful. And yes, there are lots and lots of online groups and retreats that one can do. Um, there's lots of books. There's certainly meditation groups around the place that people can connect to. So there's less of a need to let go of a lot of one's regular mainstream way of life to be able to practice meditation. But I think it's also one of the factors is aligned to that particular quote the wisdom that sees the importance of letting go of a lesser happiness to find or realize a higher happiness. And it's there's less motivation for people if we put into the terms of freedom, to relinquish or let go of some of their freedoms to have a higher freedom. It's like Ajahn Brahm talks about the idea of um, Buddhism talks about the freedom from desire as opposed to the freedom of desire. And so we've got very conditioned and socialized into being able to have our desires met very easily. Um, whatever you want, you can pretty much get it and buy from anywhere in the world online, delivered within a few days. You can even get it without the money. You just buy it on credit or on um, what's that new system where you sort of pay it off? Not BPay, it's Afterpay. Yeah, that sort of thing. You don't have to sort of like when I was a young guy, before I came actually after I left the monastery, I was working at Myers at times. At that time it was called Grace Brothers. The people would lay buy things. Said, I want to buy that book. It's expensive. So they'd pay a little bit of it. We'd keep the book aside in the cupboard, and they each week come in and pay it off. And when they've finally paid it off, you can have it. But these days, with this particular system, you can get it, and before you've even paid fully for it. So freedom of desire as opposed to freedom from desire. And we've got used to having our desires met and not realizing that by letting go of some of these desires, it's only in that way that we can have the higher freedom and the higher happiness that comes from letting go of a lot of stuff. So for monastic life is letting go of a lot of freedoms. The freedom to do what you want, go where you want, freedoms that you have with your body, eat what you want, eat when you want, listen to whatever music you want, etc. Monastics don't have that. They give up a lot of freedoms that we take for granted in pursuit to seek or to realize or fulfill the highest freedom, ultimate psycho-spiritual enlightenment. And that's, yes, certainly not easy, but there needs to be the motivation towards that. Even, as I said earlier, the coming here tonight, it's about giving up the freedom of just being at home, having some mushy food that's sort of nourishing and sort of nice and warm. It's like, no, I'm going out. But maybe you will be usually having dinner at this time. The freedom of maybe watching some show on Thursday night at 6:30. Oh, no, meditation's at 6:30. The freedom of being with family or partner or the dogs, like for an hour. It's like, no, I'm just going to meditation. So there's lots of things that we might be giving up to be here, but we realize that there's something significant and special about practicing meditation away from one's home in this sort of specialized environment with a group of people motivated towards the same goal. And then this feeds back into our monastic life, that there's less people see the benefit of that because they don't sort of see, well, how enlightenment could be really, really wonderful for them. Life is pretty good. Life is fairly easy until it's not. Then there's maybe the motivation to go, okay, well, I'm not happy with what I've got. I'm not happy in who I am. I'm not happy with the way of the world. And there's a sense of seeking and seeing and wishing and wanting to be beyond those limitations, those stresses and sufferings and responsibilities that one has. And that's where monastic life comes in as an option, as an option. Um, Certainly, one doesn't necessarily need to be a Buddhist monk or nun, a monastic, to realize ultimate freedom, but it's more set up as an opportunity to facilitate to make it more helpful. So these were some of the things that I was discussing with Ajahn Tiradhammo, and he even said, and I was a little bit surprised, he said, well, maybe monastic life is going to die out in the West. Obviously, everything sort of dies one day, but maybe it's sooner than later. It may only be a couple of generations, and there's sort of aren't people motivated towards that. We even sort of consider that a lot of the monasteries are primarily supported by the Asian community that are particularly not from Buddhist countries, so like Sri Lanka, a little bit Burma, certainly Thailand. And running a monastery, it does cost quite a bit, and same as running a household costs quite a bit. And so that um, the cost of running it, the supporting it, keeping it going, and most of the monasteries in Australia and other other countries, yes, around the world, and also particularly in Europe, they're run from the generosity of the Asian community that have a sense of the importance of generosity, which is the first of the spiritual virtues, the paramita. We've got on the list of 10 here. They see the benefits of being generous for themselves, cultivating that quality of heart of giving, letting go, supporting others, supporting monastic life, supporting monasteries where they can go and spend time. Um, and we were saying that maybe whilst certainly Buddhist monasteries in the West being supported by the Asian community, many of these Asians have come from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, from Burma, and are here. But in time, those people, as they get older, they maybe can't get to the monastery as so easily. They die. Their children that maybe have been born here are less interested, and there becomes less support in that way. So it's important then for the monasteries to be aware of encouraging, inspiring, and motivating local community to be a support for them, not just relying on the Asian community, and which certainly is an issue because it's very easy with some of these monasteries that the Asian community supports them in a significant way, and then Australians that go along, sort of Anglo-Australians said, oh, the Asian people have bought the food, they're looking after things, doing this, doing that. We don't need to do too much. And they feel that the monastery belongs to the Asian community rather than themselves. So it's important for the monastics to be more encouraging and more inspiring for local people to connect and feel this is our monastery. This is our place. This is a place for us, not just for the Asian community, where it's sort of like feels like a Thai monastery or a Sri Lankan monastery or a Burmese monastery, not an Australian monastery. Um, so these were some of the things that we were talking and considering, and as well along those lines that maybe there's learning that can be gained from even Christian monastics and monasteries that have been in the West for over 1,000 years, quite significant, that Buddhism can maybe learn something from those, even though, yes, as well, Christian monastics and Christian monasteries in the West, there's a decline in people ordaining as monastics, sort of generally through all the sort of monastic traditions, but still as learning to be taken from. Okay, so Christian monks, how did they do it? How did they connect with community? What did they do for community? And obviously, they were often teaching in schools. There would be often a monastic school, particularly Catholic schools. Sure, in Europe, the monks would maybe there'd be land. They'd sort of make wine, um, make alcohol, so the people enjoyed. Let's support the monastery. Um, But the sense of connecting with community is something significant that needs to continue, so that monasteries aren't too separated and estranged from that important dynamic and relationship, which is one of the issues with Wat Buddha Dharma, this monastery just north of Sydney, in that it is from Sydney, it takes around 2 hours to get to it, 40 minutes on a dirt road. There's no electricity apart from some solar. And it's at times it does get cut off with bushfires, or if the dirt track gets washed out. So it can be difficult for people to connect to it. So where these monasteries, centers are established needs to be sort of considered quite well. And also that the monks maybe even connect into a meditation group. I remember when I was living at Wat Buddha Dharma, Prakanti Palo, this English Buddhist monk, every month he'd go to Sydney to teach at the University of Sydney. There was a Buddhist group there. Also, University of New South Wales, a Buddhist group there. Also, teaching in a Thai temple in the city. He'd teach there. And that's when I first met him, in the Thai temple in Sydney, in the city, Wat Buddha Rangzi. Um, so connecting there, and then people would see him and then, oh, I want to come back to the monastery and do a retreat or learn more about meditation or even ordain as a monk or a nun. But if monks are too isolated and separated and disconnected, then they're not out there in a way flying the flag, the flying the flag, wearing the robe. The Buddhist robe is often spoken about as the banner of the Arahants. The Arahant is the enlightened person, the saint. Not that the monk wearing it is enlightened, but it's the banner that the Buddha wore, the robe, that enlightened monastics wore. And if you're wearing this robe, it's a symbol. It's showing this is the way to enlightenment. It's this path of practice. So it's even somewhat sad when we have monastics, not so much Buddhist monastics, but other monastics or ordained people, particularly in the Christian tradition, not wearing a robe. You wouldn't know them from anyone else. But wearing the robe, flying the flag, wearing the colors, like, there's someone that's a spiritual practitioner. They're devoting their life to spiritual practice. What's that about? What does that mean? Why are they doing that? What does that mean for me? Could I try that out? So that's sort of another aspect of helping to keep the monastic and spiritual life happening in the ordained sense, and also just being an inspiration. Because again, majority of people won't and will not, and maybe even cannot ordain as monastics, but to have that inspiration and to have monastics around can be wonderful. It's always wonderful to see monastics wearing their robe. It's a sign and a reminder for us all. They're just a few thoughts. There's not much time left. Maybe a couple of questions or comments. Brendan?
Yeah, John, I was wondering, I understand, the connection and the relationship between the monastics and the lay community, and providing spiritual teachings in return, receiving alms and robes and so forth. But if that did die out, in a non-Buddhist country like Australia, is it an option for the monastery to do farming and kind of try to be self-sufficient in some way, and wouldn't be the way that the Buddha had taught?
Yeah, well, certainly it could be, but it wouldn't maybe be the monks doing so much of the farming. One of the precepts of monks is they cannot break soil. Once the soil has been dug, they can plant things in it, but they can't actually break the soil. They can't actually cut green plants that are growing. But lay people can, novice monks can. So when I was a novice monk at Wat Buddha Dharma, I was planting trees and clipping things and so forth. So novice monks can. So yes, planting and growing food. And certainly what Buddha Dharma, when I was there, had a large organic garden for helping feed people, feed the monks.
I was just thinking, we don't know what advancements is going to be in robotics, agriculture. Might be possible for a self-sufficient farm that's managed by robots.
Sure.
In the not too distant future.
Yeah.
They may not have to break the soil, and they just prepare the meals themselves when the robots bring the food in, or the robots make the meals. I don't know.
Or just dial up and get easy choice food packages coming in.
Yeah, who knows? But, I was just curious about that. Could a monastery exist if there wasn't sufficient lay support in the area? Is it still a possibility?
Certainly possible, but part of the exchange and the benefits of a monastery is that people go to the monastery, they see monks, receive some teachings, receive some counseling, do some meditation, maybe look at the books and so forth. That connection, it's quite special.
I think it's, as you said, also, John, it's happening not only the Buddhist tradition, but all the other traditions. I think my experience is that the only Buddhist tradition that is actually growing, and it's just amazing how much it's growing, is the Plum Village tradition.
In France?
Not only in France, here in Australia also. The ones in Sydney, they started 4 years ago with a little piece of land, and now it's huge.
Wow.
Huge. They got places, people for staying there and for working there and all that. But I think it's probably they're more in touch with what's happening. They realize that people change.
Yeah.
So they have a variety of activities and anyway, you have to really look into it, but it's very different to any other tradition.
Yeah.
So
that's all through the inspiration of Thich Nhat Hanh.
Exactly. Yeah. They actually they're more based on the sangha. In the group, there's a lot of sharing and they're constantly in touch with each other.
That's good.
I belong to 3 sanghas in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition.
Oh, very good.
And I get, we get messages constantly, trying to help somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
But and also I think most of the traditions, including the church, they don't realize that people attitudes and things change. They're out of touch with people totally.
Yeah.
So
in a way, it's we're in a time of the real need for looking into and asking significant questions and working it out so that we don't lose things.
Mature now. I mean, you go to a Buddhist Dharma talk and you sit there for an hour and a half, and they became like entertainers. They tell you jokes, stories. They never get to the point. People just want to get to the point because they're already over that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not only the Buddhists. You go to church and the priest goes on and on and on. People already. They're beyond that. That's another thing that in Thich Nhat Hanh, you go to a Lama talk and they go to the point.
Yep.
And they don't deliver, they don't download that material. Where you go to a place and they download so much stuff. At the end, it's just too much.
Yeah, so obviously the Buddhism in itself has changed from the time of the Buddha over the last 2,600 years, as it's moved across the world into different countries, changing in form and flavor to accommodate and facilitate where people are at. Hence, monks and nuns wearing different robes to deal with cold or to deal with heat and so forth. So it needs to be flexible and modify. Otherwise, it's not going to last. That sense of survival of the fittest or evolution. Otherwise, things die out. So changing according to time and place, customs and culture, and needs. And to end, just saying that I think that at no other time in human history has humanity needed the benefit, the importance of spiritual practice, because in a world that is increasingly distressed and confused, psychologically, as well as the planet itself being confused, global warming and nature sort of being confused and distressed, that we need that spiritual perspective. So we're less caught up in materialistic pursuits, and being able to live more simply, more wisely, more kindly, and feel more fulfilled with less. And that's where spiritual practice and meditation comes in. So certainly meditation is that main direct way and practice to find fulfillment and joy that other people are sort of trying to sort of find through another thing that they can buy, or another sort of fad experience to have. So meditation, spiritual practice is really the way to save the planet and save humanity. So keep up the practice. Thanks for coming out on this cool evening, and see you next time.
Yeah.